Hey there. I don't know if you've heard, but there's a great new radio show on Para X. 2 hosts, 1 hour, and too much fun. Stephanie and Heidi not only talk about the latest goings-on in the supernatural worlds, they live it. They want to hear from you. They want to help you understand and guide you. And they want you to tune in. So, grab a friend or come alone to gather around that metaphysical table with Heidi and Stephanie. If you're interested in the worlds of the unseen, tune in to the Gathering Radio Show, Tuesdays at 9 p.m. Eastern on Para X Radio.
Your source for everything paranormal. Para X.
But remember, we'll always see you in the shadows.
Hi, this is Barry Fitzgerald, and I'll see you in the shadows.
The views expressed and the opinions given by the individual host and their guests do not necessarily reflect those of Para X, its affiliates, or its sponsors.
Welcome to another Monday night here on the Shadows Radio. I am Rebecca.
I'm Cara.
And we are so excited to be back.
Woohoo!
Woo! Or something. Woof.
Sorry. That excitement made me laugh.
I'm excited. I'm just sniffling through my excitement. Please excuse my sniffling through this show, as my daughter decided to get a cold and share with the class.
Well, you taught her to share, so...
I did teach her to share, so she was doing exactly as I taught her, so that's exciting.
Yeah. So, yeah. We have to excuse her for that because, she was taught to share.
Very true. All right, madam, so before we jump into our topic for the evening, let us do the housekeeping.
Housekeeping.
Every time I think of that, was that Tommy Boy?
Yeah.
Would you like some toast? Every time. So if you want to catch up on old episodes of The Shadows Radio, you can go to theshadowsradio.com and click on the on-demand link. That'll pull up every show from the dawn of time until today. Well, actually, most of the shows from the dawn of time until today. I think there's a few missing for technical reasons, but... if you just want the most recent ones to pop up automatically in your newsfeed, you can subscribe to us on Google Mute, whatever it's called, Google Play, Podomatic, Podbean, iTunes, or it's called, it's Apple Podcast or whatever it's called now. They're all there, and the links are all there on theshadowsradio.com on the left-hand side. So find your favorite subscription, and we can pop up automatically.
That sounds crazy. We pop up automatically.
We do. And just for clarification, someone asked us why we don't we upload once a month. We upload the entire month shows, so you can kind of then listen to them at your leisure. You don't have to I don't know why, but uploading them every week, people feel like they have to listen to them that week or they might miss something. So we found that uploading them once a month just, I don't know. It feels less stressful or something. I don't know. That's my excuse, and I'm going to run with that one.
I'm going to go with that one because I don't know why you have to do it every week. Although I totally get it because there are some podcasts that I have to upload every week.
Well, yeah, quite frequently. There's one, which I think I've mentioned here before, called Stuff You Missed in History Class, that uploads actually twice a week now, all of a sudden. And I'm like, I feel like I have to listen to the one before I can download the next one. And I'm like, oh no, must catch up. And there's been weeks when I've been like 2 or 3 weeks behind, and I'm like, I feel really like it's kind of drama to actually. So in order to cut out that drama, we have decided to upload once a month. So if it doesn't upload regularly for you, that's why, like I said, once a month. Okay, so Cara, I would like you to take it away.
Oh God! All right,
that was encouraging, and everyone has just tuned out because you were not selling the topic.
I can't sell anything. Have we not discussed this before?
All right. Well.
Well, you decided to talk about near-death experiences. Have you ever had one?
I decided that?
You decided that.
It was on our list of topics to discuss. It just happened to be the next one on the list. But yes, actually.
I've never had a near-death experience. I've only read about it once. And it was that book. Oh, my God. What was that book called? I can't even think about it. It was called Heaven is Real.
Okay.
And it was about that 5-year-old that
oh, yeah. They made a movie out of that, didn't it?
I thought so. I never saw the movie. I can't deal with those kind of movies. But it was that book that, he would talk about every once in a while. He would talk about things that he saw in heaven where his father would ask him questions and everything. And that's as close as I got. That's as close as I got to near-death experiences. But I didn't really know what it was because, I mean, there's some instances where people say that they had, most of it is like they get psychic abilities from having a near-death experience. That's what I've heard most often. Mm-hmm. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, a few times. So I know a few people that have had or claim to have experiences, and I don't want to kind of belittle what they say, but I mean, they've told me that they've had experiences, and a lot of them, it's been like, post surgeries or things like that, or car accidents. And yeah, a few of them have actually woken up and had a form of psychic ability that they didn't have before.
And I was like, I actually have, like real books, like paper, cover books.
What?
So
You have paper books?
I know. What are those? I have a whole set of encyclopedias too. No, just kidding. So I decided to look it up, and I actually found it in a book. And I was reading this, and this was interesting because this is not something like that's been around for a while. It was actually, the term near-death experience was only coined in the 1970s to describe people that have had these experiences and then came back to talk about them. And I thought, wow. So it's about as old as me.
I was going to make a joke and I stopped.
I was waiting for it.
I stopped. I paused that thought. So, I mean, I feel like that's kind of misleading, though. So the term might be as old as you, but I feel like people have been having near-death experiences, forever. Like, this is not a new kind of concept. It's just a new term.
No, it isn't. It's just, it's funny that term was only coined, 40-some years ago.
Yeah.
Which is kind of weird because this has been going on for millions of years. I guess they did not know what to call it.
Yeah.
That just seemed odd to me. But there was a book, I think American doctor Raymond Moody in the 1970s used the term near-death experience. He coined that term to describe the phenomenon of the altered state of consciousness, where they feel they're traveling through a tunnel towards a warm and bright light, or floating above their body, watching medical effects to revive them. Now, how is that different from astral projection? Is that the one I'm thinking of?
Yeah. So astral projection is where you consciously are sending your consciousness. Woof. So you're kind of actively telling your consciousness, hey, go to this other plane. And generally you're guiding it. And you're saying, You go over there and see that thing. I don't know, kind of like sending a puppy on an errand, I guess, for a really, really irreverent way to explain that. But that's kind of the idea. Is you're sending kind of your consciousness out for a stroll. And there are people that will astral project unconsciously. Often when you're dreaming, it'll happen. But the difference between near-death experience and astral projection, and honestly, I don't know how to astral project. I've never tried it. The idea just scares the bleep out of me because I feel like if my consciousness is not in my body, then it's never going to come back because it'll be like, I'm free, and it's going to take off. But that is my understanding of the difference between the two.
Oh my God, that was funny. I could imagine that. I'm free. She's not waking up. That's because her mind went someplace else. Anyway, because I've had out of body experiences before where I could see myself. I wasn't in it. I've had no near death experiences to talk of or to speak of. I've had out of body experiences where I can see something happening to me. Mm-hmm. But this is a whole different thing. And it was just interesting to read in a book, mind you.
Actual pages?
It was just talking about how, with the tunnel and everything, and everything that is in here. See, this is where I wonder, like, do people read this and then, next thing they have a dream and all of a sudden they're having a near-death experience? These are the things that popped in my head when I was reading all over this. Because if I read this, what if I, did have a dream and thought I was dying? And, you don't have to get your experience, your psychic powers and your intuition doesn't have to heighten if you have a near-death experience. I think it only happens with certain people who are open to that.
Yeah, it's definitely not I feel like that's not a guaranteed side effect of near-death experience.
Excuse me. Sorry. I was burping.
Okay.
That's what happens when you eat dinner late. Sorry. And I didn't want to do that into the microphone.
Thank you very much.
But you know what? It's some of these things that when they say it's the out-of-body experience in which they feel they're floating above their bodies looking down. I've had that. But I didn't have this cessation of pain and a feeling of great calm and peace. Traveling down a dark tunnel towards a light at the end, never had that. Meeting spirit beings, many of whom are dead friends and relatives. You're meeting a spirit guide who takes them through their life story. And that creeped me out because I thought, oh my gosh, imagine going through that. And actually, because I was explained from a medium that when you pass, whoever you ache the most to see on the other side usually is the one that greets you and takes you on your journey on the other side. And they also tell you that you basically like sit in a room. This is how they explain it. You sit in a room and you basically watch a movie of your life to see everything that you've done. And I thought, oh my gosh, imagine doing that and then coming back. So like seeing everything you've done, like all the bad things, all the good, everything, and then coming back, and that would change anybody.
Well, it would explain why a lot of people come back from near-death experiences and have these huge epiphany, change of heart, like I need to be a better person, I need to give more to charity, I need to give back to people, or they go the complete other way. I need to live for me. Woohoo, live it up. Like seriously, you see people come back and they go to these complete opposites. Like, okay, she was a really church-going person. She, lived for everybody. Then she comes back and she's a hard gambling, smoking, truck stop lady.
Truck stop lady. She's very selfish.
And I actually looked up kind of if there was any kind of medical kind of people who've ever chimed in on what near-death, and there are lots and lots of medical papers and journals and things if you want to dig into them. But I lost my little thing here.
Well, you saying that with the difference, the great majorities of NDEs is what they call them, are described as positive and uplifting, but only around 3% are described as negative or frightening. So, I mean, you do definitely see more positive things when, people have these, which it would explain. Going through all that would explain it. I mean, the 3%, I don't even know what the bad experience could be. So,
well, I mean, it could be traumatizing to be like, I was alive and now I'm dead, but I'm still there, but I'm not far away. Like I'm kind of stuck in the middle. Am I going to be a ghost? I'm sure that kind of, moment of uncertainty can be pretty traumatizing. At least it would be for me.
I would think so.
Why am I kind of like, I'm not crossing over. I'm not going wherever I'm supposed to go next. I'm just kind of in this weird, limbo-y place. I don't know, because everyone describes like, oh, they see the light or they start to go towards heaven and then all of a sudden they're just yanked back, and it's like, oh, that would suck. So I found the quote. So neuroscientist Robert Stevenson says that, he goes, while I would never discount anybody's belief that a near-death experience happened, I believe what everyone is experiencing is the release of many, many chemicals in the brain when your body experiences extreme trauma. When you go to the edge of death physically, your brain starts sending out pain. And he mentions some specific pain receptors. She says the brain starts shutting down pain receptors. It also sends out endorphins, to kind of ease the transition and kind of lessen the shock. And he says, but at the same time, I'm a religious man. I believe that there is something beyond this life. And until I die, I cannot officially answer the question what they are experiencing medically. Which I think is a decent way to, like, it could be this, but at the same time, I want to believe that it's something else. So, interesting.
It is. But I also found on the negative side that when you said about people adjusting back to life difficult after having a near-death experience is the feelings of anger, guilt, depression, disappointment because they have to return to life that's common.
And trucks up.
Yeah. And then, but then many people are thrilled by the wonder of their unique experience and intensely grateful and empowered by it, as well as humbled. And more research indicated that people with a difficult or traumatic childhood could be more prone to near-death experiences than others due to their personality and psychological makeup. Which doesn't even make sense.
Yeah, that I don't know. Is someone having a fight in the back of your house?
It's because I live in a house that sounds carry. So, and I don't have doors in my house. So when you hear something, everyone hears it.
Okay, just making sure there was no fist fights breaking out behind you.
There's no fist fights. There's nobody fighting. It's just loud in my house. Okay. Oh my goodness.
So let me tell you this one story that I found that I thought was very interesting. So we actually had a guy on who wrote a book called I Went to Hell and Back. Do you remember interviewing him?
I think I remember talking to a couple people that we've had on here that had went to hell and back. No, I'm just kidding. That had these near-death experiences. But yes, I do remember this one, yes.
Yeah, so he was a former NBA player, and he went and he says that, he had this experience where he went to hell and he came back, and he called that a near-death experience. And if you want to look that show up, I will find the exact date that you can pull it out of our archive. But I mean, for him, that was extremely traumatizing. But again, it was also, he called it both terrifying, like, obviously the scariest moments of his life, but at the same time, he called it uplifting. He called it, so he went to hell. He face to face with demons and hellfire and all that kind of stuff, and came back and said it taught him to be more understanding of other people's suffering. He said it taught him to be more patient. It taught him to be more, considerate. Which I'm wondering if that's why the majority of things are labeled as uplifting, because people say, oh, I need to, I need to face this stuff down and not think so much about it. I don't know. I'm what do you think?
Yeah, because these near-death experiences, all you hear about is people going towards a light, and you don't know whether they're going to heaven or hell, basically. So if this guy's saying that he went to hell and he knows he went to hell, that would change anybody. I mean, just literally, like, just change your whole outlook on everything.
Yeah. Sorry. I was looking for the thing that I wanted to make sure I could tell everybody. It was our June 24, 2013 episode. It was Kevin Benton who wrote A Field Trip to Hell. That's what it was called. So I just want to make sure that everyone could appreciate that if they wanted to go back and listen to that story.
Yeah, he wrote that book, and came, had that book. I remember it was on Amazon. I do remember that. I don't recall if I have it. I'd have to look. But it was very interesting on, because how many people do you talk to when they say, I went to hell, and they could tell you what they saw and what they experienced and everything?
Yeah.
Not many people bring that, talk about that. They talk about like like I said, the light at the end of the tunnel, the meeting of people on the other side and all that kind of stuff. They don't talk about, the only one I talked, that book, The Heaven is Real, was the little boy.
Yeah.
But also when I was reading this, because of near-death experiences and, talking to mediums in the past and everything, I thought we weren't supposed to know so much about the other side, like the afterlife. Why do you think that people get this opportunity to see that and then come back and talk about it? Is it just for them? Is it for them to tell their story, like saying that there is an afterlife? That kind of...
All right, you ready for my cynical response to this question?
Yes, I am. That's why I'm asking you.
I think it's a big bait and switch. And this is going to sound like a very horrible statement, but I'm wondering if it's like, hey, let me sprinkle these people with the story of the white light and the seeing your ancestors and kind of heading over the bridge and going down the tunnels and all these like soft, pleasant transitions to maybe hide the fact that maybe the transition, even if you're going to a good place, is not necessarily an easy one. So they're giving us this story and this hope of like, okay, well, when we go, it's going to be this pleasant place and this pleasant trip, and all these people are going to be standing there waiting for me with open arms, and that's okay. And that kind of makes us as people go, oh, okay, it's going to be great because these people have done it already and they came back and they were fine with it. Do you know what I'm saying?
Okay. All right.
Maybe that's just a super cynical side of me, but I mean, it makes, and otherwise, you're right. Why would we be given these glimpses? I feel like that would be very bad gatekeeping.
Yeah,
that's is it a breach of security? Like, do we need better angels on the call button or something? I'm not sure.
Was somebody slacking on their job that day?
Yeah, whoops. Clerical error. Yeah.
It gets, because it just, when I've talked to several mediums, I don't want to say several, but anybody I've talked to, about the afterlife and, because they're always, I don't know if it's the medium part of it or what, but they're always like, we're not supposed to know too much. Well, then why are these people getting this glimpse into it? Is it for their sake? Are they supposed to tell their story? Like this little boy, his father wrote, the story about everything that his son told him. Was he supposed to get all that and to share it so people weren't so scared? Was it just for that little boy so he wasn't so scared? I don't know. But that's, that kind of reading all this, and I was like, why just these certain people? If that's the case, then wouldn't everybody have some kind of a glimpse into it? I don't know. It was just my thought process in reading all this. Because it was like, I've never had it. I've never had any, thing like this. So, I'm totally clueless. All I can tell is what people have told me. You sit down, you watch this movie of your life, and it's like, when everybody says, oh my God, my life flashed before my eyes.
Yeah, well, that's like I said, that's why I almost want to believe that it's like, the idea of death for most people is fairly scary. You don't know what's coming next. Is it, you don't know if it's going to hurt. You don't know if it's going to be this joyous experience. You don't know kind of where you're going next, if there is a next, or is it just done and that's it? Or do you reincarnate immediately? Do you get to go stew in like a big, soul pot somewhere? There's like a soul jacuzzi sitting around waiting for it. Like there's all these different like what ifs and things.
Yeah.
And I'm speaking fairly irreverently about it, and I understand that, but I'm trying to show the enormity of we don't know.
Yeah, we don't know.
So,
and it's not a scientific. There's no way that science could ever do anything with this. They're, unless they're going like Flatliners, like that movie Flatliners, to see, but it's not, there's not going to be any scientific proof. Just like ghosts, there's not going to be ever scientific proof on near-death experiences and what they experience, just like ghosts. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Anyway.
No, you're right. And Kat in the chat room also has a good point and says maybe some mediums are wrong and we experience what we're supposed to, and that's a good point. I mean, they say we're not supposed to know, but I mean, they say a lot of they quote quote say a lot of things, So it is possible that, maybe they're not supposed to know, and I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, so.
Well, yeah, and also I think, like we say, every person is different. Everybody's experience is going to be different, and we're not going to be able to tell it afterwards because we're going to be on the other side.
Yes.
So unless we're coming back as a ghost and leaving it in an EVP somewhere.
Well, if you could do that, that'd be great. If someone could just come and just leave me a big old, I'm going to leave you a 20-minute EVP. So let me tell you. The coffee over here is terrible.
That's the deal. All right. That is the deal. If I go,
everything is made of ice cream.
I'm going to leave you a 20-minute EVP and you'll get your own TV show.
Sweet. Awesome. I love it.
Oh my gosh.
So also, go ahead.
I was just going to say they actually, in this book, they actually took and wrote down a typical, because he took accounts from 150 people. The near-death experience researcher Raymond Moody took 150 different accounts and was able to identify 15 different elements that reoccur again and again in reports. So he actually constructed a typical experience that contains all of the elements of just a near-death experience. So it's like out of 150 people, they all had these 15 elements. That's pretty interesting. That there's similarities. And this is, I mean, this has been going on, there's probably similarities to everyone's. But then you think of that, you think, oh, well, they could have read a book or they could have talked to somebody. It's just that it's not going to be perfect.
Yeah. It's always perfect. I don't know. I got nothing for that one, but no, you're right. I mean, there's a lot that we don't know, and I think there's also a problem with people building up a thing in their mind, and if it's not exactly what they expect,
okay,
you know what I mean? Like, think about it. We're told at some point in your life, this is what heaven looks like, this is what hell looks like, or if you don't believe in heaven and hell, this is where you're going to go after you die. We tell children that from, the time that they experience their first death, whether it's a pet or a family member or something, we tell them that. We say, oh, well, so-and-so's gone to a better place. And, generally it's followed up by, what does that mean? And we give them a description, and we've kind of built these descriptions up, of what these things are. Is it long white robes and harps and clouds? Is it, giant pools of ice cream? Like, it depends on who's building.
It's how that kid's going to be brought up. Like, I was raised Catholic, so we got heaven and hell. Heaven's up, hell's down. And then when you watch cartoons as a kid, Tom and Jerry, Looney Tunes, you were showed off that. So that's my experience. So as far as I know, hell is fire and brimstone, and heaven is clouds and sunshine, right?
Yeah, I feel like hell would be like a giant pool of ice cream and you're lactose intolerant or something. Like, I feel like that would be these subtle digs where you're like, this is great. Oh, man. Like, this is great. Oh, man. Like, that for me would be more torturous than like actual fire and brimstone and stuff,
Mm-hmm. But then also I work at a Presbyterian church, and most people that have been brought up Presbyterian don't believe in an afterlife.
Mm-hmm.
They believe like once you're dead, that's it, you're done. You're just done. So, I mean, like before, I think when we had Brian Kano on the show before, his big thing was when you talk about ghosts and spirits, you're actually, when you talk about this and you're bringing this up, you're talking about people's religion and their beliefs. So this is almost the same thing when you're talking about near-death experiences. You are kind of questioning, what their beliefs are, in a sense, because everybody's could be different, depending on what you believe heaven and hell is. So, but also that is another thing. would be interesting to know, like, all these people that have these near-death experiences, not just to know about their near-death experience, but also to know how they were taught about heaven and hell, what, religious background, stuff like that. Where's that study?
It's out there. It absolutely is
sure
out there.
It's out
like
there.
I said, when I was looking through some of these more, like these medical journals, and apparently neuroscience loves to study this kind of stuff because it gives them a window into kind of those moments where, we're not really there, but we're there.
Yeah, it's. I mean, talk about a rabbit hole. When you get on YouTube and you start watching this stuff.
Yeah. So I guess the big question though is, what brings these people back? Like, were they sent back with a message? Which I seem like a lot of people, it says that they were sent back with a message, or they were sent back to talk to so-and-so, or they were sent back to change this thing in their life. So did they just like come across somebody who's like, nope, you're not done yet, go back? You know what I mean? Like, what is it about these people that they got that second chance? Or was it even medical science that like they were dead, they were clinically dead, and the doctor in the room did something and magically restarted their heart, restarted their whatever, and now they're not dead anymore, and they're like, oh nope, second chance kind of thing,
Well, that could be where the skeptic part comes in, because here it says that when skeptics talk about near-death experiences, they say that it's a dream or an hallucination. Hallucinate. I can't even talk today. Caused by lack of oxygen, which if you have lack of oxygen, the release of the body's natural painkillers, which are endorphins, or increased levels of carbon dioxide in the bloodstream as the brain dies. So that could be a scientific part of it, that they're having these experiences, and it's really not an experience. It's just medically happening, scientifically happening to them, because all these things are, going off in their brain, and,
All right, well, we're going to take a break because I just realized it was the halfway point of the show. So,
oh my gosh.
Yes. So hang tight. We're talking about near-death experiences here on the Shadows Radio. We'll be right back.
Jimbo from Ghost Adventures, and you're listening to Cara X Radio.
Hi, this is Hollywood Hunt Rider Marla Brooks, and you're listening to the Para X Radio Network.
Paramount, 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 Paramount.
Welcome back to the Shadows Radio here on the Para X Radio Network. I'm still Rebecca.
I'm still Cara, I think.
You think? Are you not sure?
You could be having a near-death experience. I don't know.
If being on the radio is your near-death experience, we're all in trouble.
Let me pinch myself.
I don't think that's how you come back from death.
I don't know. I don't know. We don't know.
We know. That part I know. I'm going to guess that you're not dead. So anyway, before the break, we started kind of poking around at like some of the scientific studies and things about near-death experience. And I remember there was one pretty famous one where there was a surgeon who hid a bunch of pictures on top of a bookshelf actually in the operating room. And he said that people who claimed to have near-death experiences, he would ask them what was on top of the bookshelf. And the majority of people got the picture wrong or whatever. You know, they said it was an object. They said it was a I don't think he actually told them it was a picture. I think he just said what was on top of the bookshelf.
Right.
You know, and some people said it was this, that, the other thing. And it was, you know, he said, but there were a few people who actually said the correct picture. And he would regularly change it up. So that, you know, it wasn't like, oh, I heard from a friend of a friend that it was a whatever. But there are people who actually would get it right. And he was like, you know, and I was trying before the show to find his name and the actual like paper that he produced. And for some reason I bookmarked it and I don't know where it went. But I wrote down on my notes, I said that he said it happened statistically high enough that it made him think that there's something going on. He goes, I don't know if they're going to heaven and coming back. He goes, I don't know if they're floating to the ceiling like a helium balloon, but they're doing something. So I thought that was fairly interesting for, you know, a man of science to basically say, well, you know, I did this little experiment. Now there was no control group. I didn't purposely kill people and bring them back.
Right.
You know, it was just a happenstance. If it happened, it happened. So it happened over a period of years, but there was enough people to create a statistical probability that this might actually be happening or something, whether it's near-death experience or otherwise, is happening. So I thought that was fairly interesting.
That is interesting because, like you said, you can't have a control group. You know,
would you like to volunteer to be dead?
Yeah, it's like, do you want to volunteer to do this little experiment? So I mean, all he can do is people that he's had that he's dealt with after these experiences and ask them these questions and see what happens. I mean, really, how else can you do that? I have no idea. But I also found this article from August of this year. Turns out near-death experiences are psychedelic and not religious. And so basically they're talking about this new research that the experiences may be rooted in just your brain activity associated with psychedelics. What is everybody on LSD that's having experiences? What? That would be a control group. There we go.
We're just going to make everybody high?
Yeah, sure. Why not? And see what their experiences are. It says people who have otherworldly visions when on the verge of death could actually be experienced brain activity closely associated with psychedelics. So basically what the brain is doing when they have that, you know, the cutoff of the oxygen, all of that stuff. This is the same thing that would happen if you were on some type of hallucinogenic drug. Oh my God, I can't even talk today. And this discovery could have a profound impact on how we think about and explain near-death experiences. Researchers found that they occurred in up to 18% of cardiac arrest victims who survived to describe them. There was eerie similarities, and the most common characteristics include feelings of calmness, out-of-body experiences, traveling through a dark region or void, bright light, vivid light in the distance, communicating with other worldly agents, and traveling to a mysterious and unearthly realm. Let's see. Many people who have had near-death experiences claim that such occurrences are proof of an afterlife, or that consciousness is not inextricably tied to a living, working brain. Wait a minute. So I'm reading this, and I'm thinking to myself, well, okay, so if you're dead, your brain's not working. How would you know you're having these experiences if your brain's not working?
Because the angel told you when he sent you back?
But your brain's not working. I mean, if your oxygen is cut off, so some of your organs will still go on. You know, like, because when you are, say, in a coma or whatever, and your brain dead, that means there's no activity in your brain.
Yeah.
So, and that's the first thing to go, but they keep your organs alive. And as far as I know, your organs stay somewhat alive after, you are brain dead.
Well, it's how you become an organ donor.
Yeah. So how? That's curious. How is all this happening and there's no brain work? Is it just because does their heart stop but the brain keeps going? See, now I need to go to medical school.
Okay.
There's so many words in here that I can't even pronounce. Good Lord.
Oh boy.
Oh, yeah. See, I don't even know half these words. I'd have to get a dictionary out just to figure out how to say these words and then tell you what they mean. But anyway, it was just interesting to read some of this about, and it makes you think. Makes you think about how are they really having these experiences? Are they really dead? Or their heart just stops, but your brain keeps going on? Now, this is where I get stuck, and then I have to look everything up, and then I fall down the rabbit hole.
Well, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, so technically you need your brain to think, but does your consciousness live in your brain, or is your consciousness something that is separate from your brain? So does your consciousness keep going after brain death? So this is where you start to go, okay, do you believe in the concept of reincarnation? Do you believe in the concept of there's a soul? We'll use soul instead of consciousness because that seems to be a little less confusing. So do you believe in a soul and a body, which are two pieces of the same person? Or do you believe that, you can't have one without the other? Like it all goes down to belief. So, if you're somebody who doesn't believe that, like once you're dead, that's it. Door closes, game over. They might not come and say, oh, I had a near-death experience. They might say, oh, I just had this really trippy sensation when I was, under or whatever. They might just call it something else. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that we all should get high and figure it out.
Okay, so I went to the Google, because you always tell me, just Google it.
Google.
And it actually gave me the International Association of Near-Death Studies. Had no idea that existed. But anyway, when I looked up to find stories of different near-death experiences, I think like 199 million different things popped up.
Okay. That's a lot of things.
So, well, that's where you wonder, is it really that common? Is it, is it so common that it happens to more people than we think?
That's what I'm wondering is, so, you're right. Like, are we calling it 10 different things? Because so you talk about this term that only existed since the 70s, yet I found written record of it from ancient Egypt, where people were writing about going to the afterlife and coming back. There's obviously writings in classical Greece. Even Edgar Cayce claimed to have near-death experiences. He actually claimed to have them on a regular basis as people were, developing his belief systems is how he phrased it. So, is it something that, maybe we're just not calling it the same thing?
I'm sure it was called something else.
That's what I'm saying. And now that we're kind of like, okay, now we have this collective term. Now people are saying, okay, well, what qualifies as that collective term? Does, floating to the top of the surgery and watching yourself be cut open, does that count as a near-death experience, or is that just an out-of-body experience? And then you turn around and say, okay, well, I went all the way to heaven and came back. Okay, well, is that, okay, I would say that's probably a near-death experience. And then this person over here is saying, well, I went to a white light, but I didn't follow it. I came back. Okay, so is that a near-death? I need somebody to put down rules on a piece of paper and tell me, because clearly I am not qualified to make these decisions.
Yeah, because it's well. I'm gonna read one of these stories and let's see what we think of it.
Okay.
Okay. Let's see if I can get this one.
I think it's great. Good story.
Well, no, I just think maybe, if we take a story, and because it's literally this International Association of Near-Death Studies, and people submit their near-death experiences. So this story was actually submitted October 30th of this year. So late, it's called My Trip to Hell, Saved by a Little Angel. I don't know. Anyway, late September 2013, it was admitted to a hospital in Northern California for treatment of pancreatitis. I lay in an empty hospital room by myself, wondering if this is how my story comes to an end. He was alone, no one on the other end of the phone, given that my family was back east in Philadelphia with a 3-hour time difference. Following the diagnosis and harsh warning from the ER doctor that I was about to experience more pain than any human being would normally experience throughout their entire lives, I was admitted to the hospital for care. What happened in the late hours of that September would shatter my reality forever. I knew in my heart of hearts that I was dying. I was being called to pay the debt that all men must pay, and I was not ready. Hour after hour, I lay there in pain, which I never thought was possible. Oh, this is gross. He says, my pancreas was dissolving itself. I know pancreatitis is very painful, as far as I know, from what I understand. But anticipating the unknown, I became paralyzed with fear as my vision began to clear, and my surroundings came into focus. I found myself on the outskirts of a sea of people, who are running around like wild savages, hitting each other with a variety of different weapons. You name it, they had it. Everybody had white eyes down to their pupils, haunting eyes that I will never forget, soulless. They had every attribute of being human, but there was something missing. As I entered this dark realm, this was after he was in all this pain and kind of passed out. As I entered this dark realm, I had about a minute to get my bearings and try to figure out what was happening to me. Thought-brewing questions rapidly spilled out of my mind. Questions that I didn't say out loud because you're around soulless people, but they were being answered anyway. Random people in the crowd would scream out answers in the distance as if they could read my mind. Like he was asking, what is this place? And he was told, hell. Actually, there's more to it, but I can't say it on the radio. And he said, in utter shock and belief, he said he thought these things but never said them out of his mouth. I said, this must be a dream. This can't be real. And he would hear laughter from afar. Maybe not wanting answers, but I could not help questioning what was taking place. Not me was another thought that raced in my head as I believed the gravity of the situation was beginning to fall on my shoulders. Oh my gosh. And it says, where do you think they send angry drunks when they die? There was more to that, but I can't say that on the radio either. It came from a broken down man standing about 10 feet in front of me. His words were condescending, but his tone was resolute. I was frozen, the pure and most disturbing form of shock I've ever felt. At this moment, I realized that nobody was saying anything verbally, but they were all speaking to me inside my head. Now, mind you, this guy's in pain, and he probably blacked out from pain. And perhaps dying, but we don't know. He doesn't state medically like what was happening to him. He just says that his pancreas was dying. I trembled as I tried to back away from the ensuing chaos. I'm not a part of this, but found there was no way to go. Pitch black darkness, darker and denser than the midnight sky. As he got closer to the darkness, I felt my body being repelled back from it like the same pole of two magnets meeting each other for the first time. He was stuck. You know the feeling you get when you get caught doing something you know is wrong? Well, imagine that feeling being multiplied exponentially due to the fact that I was reaping for what I sowed for an entire lifetime.
This is the most elaborately written.
Yes, it is.
Like, does this guy also write fiction on the side? Not that I'm saying his story is fiction. I'm just saying the wording and the flowery language that he's using is pretty incredible.
Yeah, and I'm keeping some things out.
Yeah.
And when I thought things couldn't get worse, they did. The questioning was over. Now it was playtime for me and my new friends. The blink of an eye, and this is it's very detailed.
Yeah.
Every piercing white eye turned on me, and in a menacing manner, the unruly mob started creeping towards me. I knew it was on, and I was ready for it. Any of it. They started the attack with random items, shoes, shirts, whipping me with what felt like a wet towel. And it says, no, he's saying, no, please, not me. I don't deserve this. And the smiles and heckling laughter just added to the terror. It was as if this was a game to them. it was just the beginning, and they were warming up. I was surrounded by as many people as can encircle you at once, as far as the eye can see. I ducked and dodged and ran through the crowd, but the more I ran, the worse things got. Oh my goodness gracious!
All right, we have about 2 minutes left, so
oh my goodness,
take a good part.
I'm going. This is wow, and he's just keep going and going and going, and then well,
I mean, if that's a natural trip of, the pain sensors or whatever, then that's a pretty elaborate and, I mean, that is a fairly elaborate situation scenario that his brain has concocted, if that's what is going on.
Well, he goes through all these things, and he says, my heart literally felt like it kick-started back up, and I was grasping for air and screaming, and the nurses and doctors came running, and I jumped out of the bed, ripping my IV out as it tumbled into the medical machines. And, for the next 2 weeks, he's telling all the nurses about his story. So I'm reading this, but because he might not have died per se, he could have blacked out from the pain, been hooked up to all of this, and then awoke. It's just, do we call this a near-death experience, or was this he blacked out and he had these visions? I mean, you know what I mean? So it's
that's why I say somebody needs to write down the rules so I know what we're judging.
Exactly. So, I mean, that's where we say, yeah, I mean, I'm totally with you. Like, there's got to be something else, because reading this, to me, I think he blacked out from the pain. He was hooked up to everything.
Agreed.
And because he was still hooked up to IV. Why would you be hooked up to IV if you were dead?
Well, he could have been coding, But I mean, if he was coding, someone would have been in the room when he awoke.
Right.
It was all in an instant, So
right. So it's just very interesting. It would be very interesting to read some more of these stories to see what actually we could tell which is a near-death experience and which is, because these people are just telling their side of the story. We don't know any medical side of it,
Yeah. Well, I mean, near-death experience is an entirely subjective concept, People create these stories and, I mean, I don't say they create these stories. They tell their story, and you have to take them at their word, because you can't, kind of run with it. So you can't question them either, because then you're the jerk that questioned the guy that just died. So there's that.
Exactly. Exactly. But it's definitely a subject that it's going to be, it's going to come up more times than you think. I heard near-death experiences, and I'm like, that's just something. And then you find out that it's thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people that are experiencing this and thinking that, that they went on this journey and there was a reason for it, because they needed to change the way they were living. And, it just makes it wonder. It just makes you wonder, some people are experiencing it because they do need that change.
So and there's a cosmic checklist somewhere that says, okay, Cara really needs to rethink her, wanton truck stop habits. So we're going to give her a near-death experience to change her mind. I mean, I'm asking, like, honestly, do you think that's kind of like there's some checks and balances somewhere where your life has swung so far out of balance that they need to kind of realign you?
No, but I believe things happen for a reason. And sometimes, like this kind of story here, I think he just blacked out from pain and had this, coming of, oh my gosh, this is my life. This is how it's going to end. I've never done anything right. And then had this, creepy story to tell, and probably changed the way he, lived his life.
Yeah.
And that's the way I think. Everybody could be different. So I guess it's all subjective.
It is. So hopefully we gave you something to think about here with the near-death experience. And if you've ever had one, let us know, because I'm very interested to hear kind of what people, kind of where they're coming from and what story they have to tell, and see what, like you said, like how their background kind of plays into it. So let us know. And we have to sign off now because somebody's doing the impatient dance over there. So as always, I'm Rebecca.
I'm Cara.
And we'll see you in the shadows.